And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that has computer. They can see my screen. So welcome everyone. I'm Cindy Myers, and tonight topic and webinar is intuitive listening. Oops, I brought up the wrong one. I'm sorry. Hang on. Yep, okay. I just forgot to change the topic, the title. Silly me. Okay, tonight is not on spring growth. It is on family dynamics. So I apologize, I didn't catch that. What we're going to cover today is a little bit about my own dynamics and how I got here, family systems and emotions and energy and how it impacts our family dynamics. And we're also going to talk about the shadow and the definition of the shadow and its impact on our self and family and the family system as well. And we're going to talk about some steps that you can take into becoming more aware yourself. And I'm going to make sure I turn my phone off just to make sure that doesn't go off like everything else right now. All right, so with that, we are on our way. So just a quick little note, disclaimer, if you're not feeling well, please call your doctor. If you're having a medical emergency, call 911. I don't diagnose illnesses, but what I do is support your body and yourself, releasing trapped emotions, opening your energy system so that your body can be optimized for healing and working alongside your doctors. So a little bit about my dynamics and how I get here, because I get asked that a lot. I do have a degree in engineering, and how I got here, to fit kind of with our topic, and the shadow and the unconscious. Every stage of how I got here, you wouldn't think being an engineer and counseling, having a master's in counseling would really go together. Yet both of them have been really vital in my work that I'm doing today. As an engineer, well, as with my degree as an aerospace engineer, the basics of physics and understanding frequencies is exactly how I interpret my intuition. I sense things in my body as an empath using frequencies. And then my first job as an engineer was working on radars. And it was that work, my very first job really, that groomed me for this work that I do now. And that was, my project was working on a device called a video processor. And that component of a radar is the brains. There's the transmitter and a receiver, and they just send a signal out and catch it when it bounces off something, comes back at it. But really the brains, how it interprets what frequencies to send out and how to modulate it all and do all the thinking, happens in that video processor. And really that training and understanding how the frequencies can work and all that, what's going on in that frequency processor, was somehow getting into my brain, because that training really was setting me up for how I work now. And then it was my interest in counseling that got the other side of the brain working, but it was in the depth psychology. I have an emphasis in depth psychology, and so learning how to work with dreams, the shadow, our unconscious, metaphors, all of that work and training and interest in studies helped me understand intuition that comes in, because it doesn't, at least for me, it doesn't come in with a voice telling me, hello Cindy, this is what I want you to understand. It's by metaphor. It's very complex information, or very subtle information, that my video processor then has to go through a whole lot of calculations or processing in order to make sense of it, and interpreting to come out of my mouth and hopefully make sense to my clients. And then the final training ground was becoming an alpaca farmer. And alpacas are so intuitive. and they taught me more about intuition than anything, any human or any species out there. Living with them every day just honed and developed my skills. And because they don't like to be touched, they're animals that are kind of skittish by nature, they taught me how to send information and receive it hands off. So energy work I learned to do at a distance. And that was training for me to be able to do my work, which is almost all over the phone, helping clients all over the country. And it's all done over the phone. So that's kind of my story a little bit, and how I got to where I am today, and how each aspect was an important step in order to come together, and a summation of all my experiences. So let's get into today's topic of family systems and how that works with emotions and energy. Because in our previous talks and webinars, we've talked a lot about emotions and how they work, and we'll do a quick little review of that so anybody that's new can understand my theory of emotions. And then we'll talk about how it gets more complex when we add in the family system. So how emotions work is that, you know, we have emotions all day long, but in our body, they're just chemicals. And they have a frequency component to them. So because they're just chemicals, that's how I know they're just energy. And once you get it into the energy format, then I interpret it as frequencies. So every emotion that we go through has its own frequency signature to it. And so as we're working with emotions, we aren't just in our own little vacuum, right? Yes, they may be happening strongest within us because they're our experience, but we are acting like those radars. And so there's a little bit transmitting out, and that energy is going out amongst us. It's having that ripple effect, like on the screen in the lower left corner where it shows that ripple. And it's nice and smooth and perfect, right? But in reality, our emotions are more like on the right side of my screen, which is very chaotic looking. It's not smooth. It's not a nice concentric circle. It's all over the place. And when you add the family system on top of it, it gets even more convoluted and complex, because now every person in the family has their own set of emotions impacting all of us. And so we're transmitting it out. We're receiving not only our own, but others' emotions, and that's impacting us. And it impacts the energy of the household. And it can be good. It's not a positive or negative necessarily, because if we're having a great time and the family's in a cohesive place, it can be very powerful and wonderful. But if it's in a stress state, or if one person is in a higher stress state, then the family is trying to adapt to that energy of the person that might be struggling at that time, maybe had a bad day at the office, whatever might be happening. That the family is adjusting and one, absorbing that energy, but also working around it. So it's not just our own little world. And then it's not just the family system. You go out in the public, you're dealing with all the energy of everybody around us. Or in your work environment, you're working with the energy of everybody around you. So it can get really complex very fast. But there's good news about it, and that we can work with it. The more we become aware of how the emotions work and how they work in not only within ourselves, but in the family system or in the system outside in our environment, the more aware we are, the more we can adjust and adapt to it and not be sucked into it. Going back into my engineering a little bit, if you think about us like our own little solar system, where our maybe each one of our emotions or our chakras may perhaps have their own little solar system amongst it. And our emotions are adjusting and working and swirling around into each one of those areas. Well, if you have somebody that's maybe pushing our buttons, we may tend to go right into their orbit. That negative energy kind of sucks us in, right? The drama can maybe suck us in, and we can get into that orbit and get stuck, or we can be stuck in our own stuff. And so by understanding, becoming aware of how those emotions work and how unconscious many of them are, as we become aware of them, then we can get some tools to help us break free of that orbit that's been holding us back. And the beauty of it is too, when I studied some of the flight paths of space missions, that we can use the gravitational pull to help catapult us to where we want to go. It can actually give us momentum, but we have to use it then from a conscious place instead of getting sucked into that negative energy. So let's talk about the shadow and what that means. It's a Jungian term, and it talks about the hidden or unconscious aspects of oneself. And so, which is all fine and well, it's a nice, easy definition, but if you're not conscious of your stuff, it's hard to be conscious of it and become aware of it because you're not conscious of it. You kind of get into a negative feedback loop there, right? But that's where the beauty of having a family system or having others around you can help us, because they quite often act as the mirror. When your buttons get pushed, it's usually because there's something in your shadow, in your unconscious, that is getting triggered. And so that's a great time to hold up a mirror. Because sometimes we just don't realize that we're being triggered or that we're in an unconscious state. And so that's one way that we can do it, is that if we're having a misunderstanding with our family member, that quite often is because there's something in our unconscious state that is being agitated. And so it's a good opportunity, then we can turn it into an opportunity to say, well, maybe I need to look at myself and see, why is this bothering me so much? And not that it's always our responsibility, but we are responsible for our own selves, right? And so there's opportunities to continue to grow and to help find our authentic self. So if something is really agitating us, it's usually because there's something in us that wants to get understood. So that shadow kind of gets a bad rap because it kind of sounds spooky and unpleasant and negative. And it can feel that way because it's usually not comfortable when we get our buttons pushed. But it has that opportunity. It's usually the catalyst that helps us grow, because we tend not to want to grow if life is going well. We need something usually that agitates us to get us out of our comfort, again, out of that orbit. We get comfortable, we get sucked in that orbit, and that's just what we know, and we're not going to get out of it. And so we need something to help boost us out of it. And it's something that's happening in our unconscious state, usually, that is uncomfortable, that agitates us, that makes us want to go, I need to figure this out. And that gives us the momentum to help break free. So that the shadow is very important. So one of the other ways that we know the shadow is talking to us is in our dreams. That dreams are a fertile ground for our shadow, our unconscious mind to be communicating to us. So if you remember your dreams, I encourage you to jot them down, because the imagery, the boogeyman that comes in, those are shadow characters, the nightmares, those things, the struggling dreams, those are dreams that are trying to communicate to us that's trying to work through these shadow dynamics, this unconscious dynamics that wants us to grow and to learn from it. And so the dreams, the images, the metaphors of the dreams can be very rich, very fertile information in helping you understand what dynamic you may want to modify and help grow from. So that's one of the great ways of communicating with the shadow. And then it's also signs of nature. Spirit can come through and give us all these images. For me, animals talk to me all the time. I have a number of totem animal definition books, and I will open them at random. And they quite often, if I'm trying to figure something out, or I need validation, or just trying to understand some dynamic that I'm working through, they quite often, just by using my intuition and opening the book at random, it speaks to me. Or I'm outside and all of a sudden a bird will be looking at me very intently, and I go, I think that bird is talking to me. And I'll go up and come in and look up the meaning of that type of bird, or whatever the creature may be. So nature can be a wealth of more information that helps us understand what's going on in our unconscious mind. And then again, with our interpersonal relationships, those are also, because if there's somebody's pushing your buttons, good chance, or you're blaming somebody over something that's really bugging you. If you're pointing a finger at them, there's 3 fingers, 1, 2, 3, pointing back at you. So that's saying, you know what, it's probably some of it is me. It's not just them that's doing something that you don't like and inappropriate perhaps, but there's probably 3 things that maybe I need to look at in myself that wants to get healed, that's related to whatever is upsetting you. So interpersonal relationships are grand areas for understanding our shadow and helping us grow into our most authentic self. But it does get complex because, again, in our family dynamics, each one of us may be growing, but at different rates. And so it's a good thing and a bad thing, because it can be agitating where one person is growing maybe at a more rapid speed, and the other one is going, I don't like this, I don't want to grow yet, or I'm too scared for the change that's happening, and it can impact things. So you're maneuvering through a lot of dynamics and a lot of emotions. So, but in ourselves, again, we may not be able to, everybody is responsible for their own growth. One way to look at it is in your chakra system, and each one has a different message, I guess, or responsibility, and it's a power source, and each one has its kind of own frequency ranges as well. And so sometimes getting a sense, you may have a health issue or a sensation in certain parts of your body. And if you go to the chart here and looking at the screen, and you can sense it, if it's in your solar plexus, or maybe you feel a vibration in your crown of your head, that's probably something talking to you from, again, one of those signs that intuition is coming in and trying to get your attention. And if it's from the crown, if it's coming in from the top of your head, then it's like, oh, that's my sacral area. Really, then I really pay attention, because spirit is talking, really downloading information into me, or into my third eye. That will get very buzzy and vibrational, a thickness sometimes. I'll get a feeling, but sometimes I'll feel it like in my solar plexus. Actually, if I get anxious about something, I will feel it in my solar plexus. That is one of my tells that I'm going into my fight or flight response system. Again, I'm going into my unconscious dynamic, is because I get that butterfly in my stomach. That is the first thing that I notice. And then I feel my heart rate going up. So I have 2 things happening in my body that give me indications that I'm being triggered and going into my unconscious state and my reactionary fight or flight response system. And that's a good time to go, take a deep breath and figure out what's going on, because I'm going to get sucked into that orbit and I don't want to go there. So I need some tools to get me out of that. And we're going to talk about some of those tools. But before we get there, I just wanted to show you this frequency chart that I've shown a number of times. And it just kind of gives you an idea of the different emotions and the speed of the emotions, the frequency rate. And so lower frequency emotions move quite slowly. And those are the ones that are easy to get stuck in our body. And they act like a real magnet. Those are the ones that get us sucked into the orbit, because it's slow moving. It's a strong magnet to get us in there. But it's the high frequency emotions, the love and above. You'll hear me say love and above quite often. It's the love and above ones that are kind of like a thruster that helps give us the momentum that helps us get out of that orbit, that stuck rotational path that we've been in. So I like this chart. It just kind of gives me a visual of helping me, especially when I'm in an unconscious state, and you need tools to help you that are simple. because you forget about everything because you're in this unconscious habit and you're in that orbit and you forget everything. So, so here's a few easy techniques so to help you though to get you out of that orbit when you feel, again, like for me, it's my solar plexus and my heart rate going up. I take a few deep breaths. I'll take a number of, I like to do breathing in fours. Well, I'll take a deep breath on a count of 4 and hold it for a count of 4 and then release it on a count of 4. And I do it 4 times. And by the time I do that a number of times, I'm starting to get a parasympathetic response, chemicals flowing into my body instead of the fight or flight, the adrenaline-based chemicals in my body that want me to go into the fight or flight response system. The parasympathetic chemicals want to get me into my calming brain. And so another good way, again, looking from that chart, the lover above, are gratitudes. Those are high frequency emotion. And those chemicals now are going into, if you can come up with a few gratitudes, and it doesn't have to be a gratitude related to anything you're being triggered over. You know, if you're in a family dynamic situation and somebody's upsetting you, you don't have to go there with them. If you can take those few deep breaths, think of a few gratitudes. Again, doesn't have to do with anything with that person or the relationship. It can be, thank goodness, I'm so grateful it's a beautiful day outside. I'm so grateful that my dog Tesla is now laying down and being quiet. And now those chemicals are coming into my body. It's slowing me down. My heart rate just slowed down. I'm able to get into my thinking brain better. And now I can problem solve. I'm not going into that reactionary brain. And then I like to use this phrase, what would it take? So once I kind of slow things down, I've got my thinking brain going on, I use that phrase and it gets me into an action mode instead of the orbit that your monkey brain is taking over. I'm spinning, I'm stewing over whatever is upsetting me. Take those deep breaths, think of a few gratitudes, and then what would it take to help deal with this situation in a calmer fashion? It's like, oh, well, maybe I just take a few more deep breaths, or I can just talk a little more slowly. I don't have to get upset about this. This isn't my, maybe this is something else going on. It just helps us see a different perspective. Maybe I can look at this at a different perspective, or maybe I need to just take a break and then let's talk about it when we're both in a calmer state. Whatever the dynamic is, it can help us get into the thinking brain that you can come up with a solution instead of getting upset. Or in a family dynamic situation, if your partner is kind of in that orbit and you're getting into your thinking brain, you can help ground them. You can by you being in a calmer state. Again, this is where that ripple effect can happen. When you get calmer, that energy is now radiating out. That helps them. They're absorbing it. And it can be enough to help them come out of their own. And what would it take? It can come up with some solutions, even if you're still in your fight or flight response system. And so that's where your partner can help you and be collaborative as you're being triggered. You can help each other through those dynamics instead of both of you going into your own orbits. Okay. So those are a few things, and talking about a brief topic about family dynamics. Let me tell you, family dynamics is such a rich topic that we could have a whole series of webinars from here until eternity. But so this is very high level and a very quick, brief little discussion of family dynamics. But if you have any questions, let's hopefully we have some good questions that we can talk about and answer your questions about it. But before I do that, if you're interested in future events, please go to my website. We have some more webinars coming up. I have an animal and emotions webinar coming up in a couple weeks, and then more intuitive listening ones. And I invite you to join my Your Energy Healer Facebook group. It's called Your Energy Healer. And this is a fun but educational and collaborative, talking about dynamics. It's our own little family system and solar system dynamic in this energy group. It's a closed group so that you can share your own experiences, your own intuitive hits. I share mine. I provide articles or information that I feel might help people as they grow their intuition. We sometimes get into dreams and how they work. I have a Tuesdays teacher where I provide one of my animals, so anybody that's interested in developing their animal communication skills or trying it out, you get to practice on my animals. And I give you feedback and validation and all sorts of information and tips on how to do that, work with communicating with your pets. And so just different things are coming up, and it's evolving as more people are coming in. So I encourage you to join that group if you're wanting to grow your intuition. And it's a really nice community of like-minded people where we can work on that together and be a supportive, collaborative group. So thank you for coming on tonight, and we're going to get on to demos and questions in a second. If you'd like more information, you can contact me on my website, Cindy at beananimallistener.com, or go to my website, beananimallistener.com, and you can find more information about my different services. I usually start people with, if you're new to me, with one of my starter packages, which includes a 45-minute session with a follow-up 15-minute session. That's what the package is. And we do it all over the phone. So once you purchase a package, you'll get an automatic link to my scheduling system, and you can just book an appointment and I call you at that time. And it works both with humans or animals. There's a page for each. So you can take a look at my website and see if anything's in interest. If you have any questions, just give me a call. So with that, we're going to get into the fun part of Q&A and demos. So if you want a session or experience what it's like for me to tap into you and release some trapped emotions that might be holding you into your unconscious state, this is a good opportunity. And if you have any physical issues going on, I can help, hopefully by releasing some of the trapped emotions. It helps relieve some of the discomfort. So if you haven't experienced it, I encourage you to give it a try. Let me practice it on. You can experience it for yourself. You can put it, if you want it, you can put it in the chat box, Q&A box, raise your hand. If you have voice capability, I can turn you on with your microphone on. So, anybody? Let's see. What do you got here for me? Any questions on that? This was a new topic, so I'd be interested in your feedback if this was a topic of interest. I'm always looking for new topics. Anybody that has a topic that they'd like to learn more about with energy work or how it works, how fear works, anything that's related to emotions or trapped emotions, intuition. I'm always looking for topics, so you can help me come up with more areas of interest to you. So I'm going to pick on people if you're not going to ask questions here. We're being quiet tonight and bashful. We've got a few folks on. Let's see. Are you there? Oops.
Here we are.
There you are. Hey, how are you tonight, Kathy?
Not bad. You?
Good.
You seem pretty good, actually.
So you have any questions?
Well, I had a lot while you were speaking, and of course, when you call on me, they all go away. But
That's what you just went into your fight or flight response system because it went poof.
Right. Well,
so how would you go about getting access to them?
They were along the lines of identification. You know, how does one kind of identify what your emotion is. I just can't quite get that.
Okay. Well, sometimes our emotions are a swirl, right? When I release trapped emotions, I kind of identify one at a time. But there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
times it is you're having multiple emotions over one event. It's not just that's where it's so complex. And a lot of these things that we see, we even those chakra charts, we make it look like it's so simple that we work on chakra 1 and then chakra 2 and then chakra 3, and it just doesn't work that way. You're working on multiple areas at the same time. It to me it's like it's like having an orchestra, and all your emotions are like a one of the musical instruments in the orchestra.
Uh-huh.
And it adds more complexity because we can call something anxiety, but there's a bazillion definitions of anxiety, and so each one of those has its own frequency component to it, and so it gets really complex quickly. But a lot of times it doesn't even matter sometimes what the emotion is. It's more, I know I'm getting triggered. If I'm being triggered, I don't care what my negative emotion is. I want to get into my thinking brain. So how do I get there? So I'm more looking at what is happening to me so that I know that I'm going into that I'm going into a triggered state. And because once I go into that triggered state, I'm going to be following a habit that I probably am working to change or would like to change. I may not understand what that habit is even fully. Some of the unconscious dynamics is really intense. And so, but I know I'm going there because I feel it in my body. So that quite often that's the first sign that I'm going someplace. I may not even know what my emotion is yet.
Uh-huh.
But well, one way to do it is you can go and look up emotion code. Here, this is my cheat sheet, and you can Google emotion code and pull out their chart, and it lists a whole bunch of emotions, and you can kind of go, well, I think I'm having one of these fits best. And it'll jump out at you. If you're
Right.
struggling at what emotion it is, having a chart can come in handy. And this is what I use to help identify trapped emotions for people. Is I call it my handy dandy cheat sheet, because otherwise it sometimes I'm tapping into somebody and it comes right into my head and it's really obvious, but sometimes it's not as clear, and so the cheat sheet helps kind of identify it a little bit better. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it does. Actually, it answers the question. So I guess it's it's not less important to put a name to it, but to identify that it's happening.
Right. It's more becoming aware that we're going into that state. I don't a lot of I will actually stop people. They like to tell me the story of whatever their orbit is about, whatever the process is. They love to tell me all about whatever the story is, the story of whatever upset them. They want to tell me that story. And it's the same story whether maybe change the event, but it's pretty much the same story. And what's happening though, is that when you retell the story, guess what? You're releasing those
Uh-huh.
chemicals into your body again. The memory, the brain doesn't know the difference between the 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 experience when it happened in the moment and you're retelling it. It's going, oh yeah, I remember all that. Oh yeah, here, let me make that batch of chemicals, and they're putting it back into your body again. So if I just cleared a bunch of trapped emotions and it may have triggered a memory for you, guess what? Your retelling of that emotion, that memory is releasing those chemicals that I just released. And so I don't want you to get them stuck again. Sometimes I need the story the first time and to help coach and understand the dynamic. But after a while, I will stop a person and say, you know what? You're going into your fight or flight response system. You're going
Mm.
into your conscious brain. Is that where you want to go? And they usually say no. So okay, well then let's change. This is what you hired me to help you change, is to help you become aware of when you're going in there, because half the time people aren't even aware that they just went from being in a conscious state into the unconscious state. I can feel it. I can totally feel when a person goes from one to the other. But you don't, the person has no clue that they just went into their fight or flight response system. It isn't like you're, unless it's a really huge thing, there's so many smaller incidences that we don't realize they're not these high energy emotions necessarily that put us into that fight or flight response system. It doesn't mean that it's it's one of these huge scary things that your heart really going like crazy and that real startled reaction, something traumatic just happened. When you're just having an argument with somebody, you're in the fight or flight response system. It may not be a huge altercation, but just being irritated with somebody, you're going into your fight or flight response system. Somebody cuts you off on the freeway, you can go into your fight or flight response system, and you can be going, oh yeah, you piece of, you go into the little bit anger back at them and being grumpy as you're driving. You just went into your fight or flight response system and you don't really realize it. So becoming more aware of when we're tipping over, that's what I'm trying to help people realize, is that so much of our day-to-day waking life is not in our conscious thinking brain, our aware brain. And so the more we work with it, the more we become aware, self-aware, and realizing when we're getting our buttons pushed, that we can help pull ourselves out, and we're a lot more productive. We can start going towards being our more authentic self when we can get out of that, I call it the monkey brain, monkey brain or lizard brain, so that we can get into thinking really for ourselves instead of this little lizard brain making all our decisions for us on how to act, how to behave, how to think, how to feel. That orbit is really run by this little lizard. So helping you guys help understand where is that place where, and getting comfortable of knowing what are your tells, what are your signs of when you're going into that fight or flight response system. And then using the breathing techniques and the gratitudes, that becomes the new habit. And then the what it takes. Those 3 steps we repeat over and over and over until it becomes second nature. But really takes practice, and sometimes it takes somebody to kind of help you realize, because you don't know that you just went into the fight or flight response system. So that's where it's really beneficial to have a coach that can kind of say, oh, Kathy, you just went there, and stop you in the moment so that you can feel what happened, and then back you up and go, where are you feeling it in your body? Mm-hmm. What's going on? Can you sense what's going on? And then the more you realize it, because it's quite often you'll have a similar tell, like for mine, solar plexus and heart rate. That's when I know, and the back of hair in the back of my neck. I just, I can feel it. And I start breathing really shallow as well. And so those are my tells. And now that I can feel it, I may not know what just pushed my button, but I know it, that I just went there. And I want to stop it because it's not going to be productive. I'm not going to get the best outcome. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does. That's a big help.
Thank you for letting me pick on you. Do you need any, you want any releases, or one for Misty or anybody?
Sure. Let's talk about Misty. I worry. I worry every time she lays down.
Yeah.
And she pops right back up again. So.
Okay, let me check in on her. Yeah, I woke up somebody the other day. They were sleeping too soundly out there. Are you okay? And they shot up. Oh, sorry. We're talking about alpacas, by the way, folks. So Misty is an alpaca, beautiful gray alpaca. Oh, she's hot. She's saying she's hot. Probably would like the hose tomorrow. I'll tell her tomorrow, maybe. And she's going, "Do you have any apples?" Um, apples or carrots will do. She's such a character. Hmm. So I do feel some energy stuck. So let me clear a couple things for her. Um, vulnerability.
Hmm.
Clear that. Her right eye is itchy. I don't know if something just flew in it or if maybe the pollen or something. But the right eye feels kind of funky. Mm, pride. Yeah, that'd be Misty. So I just asked her if everything's going okay with Thea, and she goes, "Yeah, yeah, she's fine. She's a dork." But she's become quite fond of her. She makes a fuss about it, but she doesn't want to truly admit it. But I think she's kind of gotten to be quite fond of Thea, which is nice. I don't think she ever originally cared for her too much in the beginning. Oh, there's the release. Good. Okay. So now we got some better energy flowing. So I asked her if there was anything else she'd like to say, and she said, "Just don't forget to say more apples and carrots." Yeah.
Well, the vulnerability, I think is important for everyone, because that her feelings of vulnerability, she acts bossy or mean, or does the alpaca head motion.
Mhm.
Don't get too close, don't get too close, and in some ways it can be interpreted as bossy, but it's really her vulnerability.
Yes. Yes. Uh, I just worked with an animal um, that was had an injury and became aggressive for a little while because they were feeling vulnerable. So,
Uh,
so to protect themselves, they acted out, very much like a bully in some time. And in this case, they really did act very bully-like, but it was really masking their vulnerability. So they wanted to come off as extra an aggressor in order to keep the others at bay, but it caused a problem in the household. Again, that family dynamic. If you want to understand family dynamic, watch a herd animals like the alpacas, because they really they really demonstrate the family dynamics because they're very dependent on each other. They're herd animals, so they need, for their own protection and survivability, they need to be together, yet they have their own personalities, and sometimes they irritate the heck out of each other. But so you can see how they work together, and yet and you're hurt, you have two alpacas, and so they're very dependent on each other. So when one sleeps, the other can stay awake, but they can come off as bossy with the other,
mhm.
or um you can really see the dynamics, or even in a larger herd. I have 23 on my farm. You can totally see the dynamics between the various animals, and they have their friends too that they hang out a lot more with. But in times of danger, it is really fascinating to watch their dynamics and how they work together to protect each other, and or if they have babies around, how they put the babies in the middle. It's just fascinating watching the dynamics. But it also, because they're very instinctual, when we go into our fight or flight response system, we're going into a very common area, and it's very instinctual with us too. And so there's not that much difference between us and these other animals. So we can learn a lot about ourselves by observing them. And yeah, we have a lot more complexity with our thinking brain that adds more complexity to we have a more complex emotional vocabulary than they have, and we have a more complex uh, uh, problem creating and problem solution brain. But at the same time, when our buttons are pushed, we really handle things very
Mhm.
instinctually. So observing how they handle it and how they come out of it, when they get upset with each other because they're dependent on each other, they figure out how to get along again. Or in a time of crisis, boy, do they know how to come together. They're not going to be squabbling with each other if there's a threat, an outside threat. They're working together to protect each other and themselves, because protecting one is protecting them all. So it's very fascinating. I've learned so much just by observing animals, especially herd animals, but also watching predators as well, because again, that's the fight
Mhm.
response system. And then watching the herd animals, it's the flight system. So they're both very valuable in understanding the instinctual dynamics of what's going on in this fight or flight response system that we're going through. Okay, and working with them is very similar. When I work with animals, it's very similar than working with humans. It's just we humans want to hang on to our baggage more than animals do. Animals tend to like to let it go easier. So thank you for that, Kathy. That was really valuable. Oh, one thing that, because of vulnerability that came up, there's a very good TED Talk I'm going to type it in the chat box, by Brene Brown, and it's a TED Talk. If you Google TED Talk and Brene Brown, her talk is on vulnerability, and it is excellent. And I highly recommend people watch. I think it's only about 15-20 minutes long, but it's well worth your time to watch that, because it's how she describes vulnerability and the power of being vulnerable and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable is just huge. So I highly recommend listening to that Brene Brown TED Talk that she did a number of years ago. It's very, very good. So again, thank you, Kathy.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else would like a session or a demo? Raise your hand. You can raise your hand. Janet, I'm going to try and unmute you. Do you have voice capability? I don't know if you have voice capability. You might have to unmute yourself. Are you there? Hello, Janet. You raised your hand. Can you type in the chat box? Is that possible? Or Q&A box if you have. I'm trying to get you sound. I don't hear you. I'll leave you on. Anybody else? If you put what you would like done in the chat box, Janet, I can work with you that way as well. Anybody else? How about, I'm going to select somebody here. there we go. You don't have voice capability. Okay, I wanted some help clearing old dynamic of feeling like a, okay, deprived victim. Alrighty, let me see what we can do about releasing some trapped emotions about that. So it'll take me a second to tap into you. Hmm. So the emotion is unworthy, and I'm releasing that. Taken for granted is another one. I'm releasing that. Vulnerability, another vulnerability. So perfect time to talk about that Brene talk. So I'm gonna release those. Uh, those emotions are really powerful. And again, when you have, I guess that those feelings of being a victim, again, that's that going into that. It's a fight or flight response habit. That's you're going into that orbit, and so that's where coaching, getting you some tools and helping you when you realize, because that's a really strong one. Um, so sometimes you don't know you're going there, and the sooner we can get you aware that you're going in there, to help you use those 3 steps to practice to get you out of it. So doing some little coaching with you and helping you through different experiences, so in the moment, and coaching you through each step so that you can feel it. So I help you identify where you're feeling it in your body, what's going on in your body, or in your, or words. Sometimes there's trigger words that you don't realize you're using that are telling you that you're just going into the fight or flight response system. And let me share those with you, that because these are quite common words that a lot of people use, that are little tells that you're about to go into your fight or flight response system. And those words are: I need to, I should, I could, I would, I wish. So but need and I should are probably the 2 most used words that are indicators and red flags that you're about to head into your fight or flight response system. You're about to, lizard brain is taking over, and you're going into orbit and getting stuck there in that same old habit. So if you hear those 2 words coming out of your mouth, that's a good time to say, oh gosh, I just heard myself say I need to. I think I better try breathing. And what was that phrase? Oh yeah, what would it take? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to do some gratitudes. Even if you're not really going into your fight or flight response system, it's good practice. It will just, it can do no harm. And it's just really good practice to go through those 3 steps as often as you can. I do it now so many times in the day that I don't, that's unconscious. I have no idea how many times I say, oh gosh, what would it take to get this done? Or whatever I'm thinking about. Or I can feel myself getting my button pushed. You know, oh, okay, oh shoot, now I need to do some gratitudes, do some deep breathing. Okay, what would it take to do X, Y, or Z? Okay, and it's very automatic. But let me tell you, when I was first working on my own dynamics and my own orbits, uh, and that phrase, what would it take? I could not remember it for nothing. I would be out in my field and I'd be spinning. My monkey brain would be taking over and stewing over something. And I knew I was in that state and I knew to breathe, but I could not come up with the phrase that, what was that phrase that I learned about that will help me get out of this state? And I couldn't remember it. So finally I wrote it down in a piece of paper and I carried it in my pocket. And then so when I get triggered, I go, and I was going into that spinning monkey brain, I go, oh yeah, I got it in my pocket. Oh yeah, what would it take? And that would be enough to help me pull out and get me moving forward. and Tesla just joined us. So thank you for that. Thank you for letting me try that out. But we might want to schedule some time and we can give you some more coaching tips that are really specific to helping you through that particular dynamic and helping you overcome that. Let's see, Michelle, you have your hand up. So thank you, Janet.
Hi, I just have a quick thing. My kitten Roy, that you are familiar with, I have a two-story house, and I have the balcony, and he's starting to lean over it and looking like he wants to jump.
Oh,
yeah. And I keep on, I go up to him and then I just shoo him away, but he has been doing it more and more. And then he even jumped down and landed on a roll top desk, use that as a step,
mm-hmm.
and then hit the floor. But I'm just so afraid he's going to hurt himself. So I just thought maybe you could just tell him not to do it.
Well, I could try. Telling him to try and tell him, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's more, we don't want to tell them, this is important when you're communicating to animals, we don't want to do it in a negative.
Right.
Don't jump, because all they hear is jump.
Mm-hmm. So
we want to tell him in a way that it's important to stay. So we're on the balcony, you said? So we want him.
Yeah, I have like one of those, like a balcony across the, like a walkway upstairs, and it's one whole floor. It's a stairway, it's a two-story house.
Okay, so we're going to tell him to stay on the balcony.
Yeah.
He can look, but he needs to stay on the balcony. Stay where he is. And I'm going to let him know that would be, it would hurt him and dangerous.
Yes, because you can just see he's looking down. He's like looking for some place to jump to, like to jump, like. Let's
tell him where he can jump. Where is it an acceptable place where he can enjoy jumping? Is there places where he's allowed to jump on and off of things?
Well, he jumps on and off the sofa, but that's pretty much it.
Well, that's getting boring. Is he allowed to jump up and down off of the bed?
Yes.
So he's still looking for something else that could be fun. So I think he's bored. So you might need to find him something that gives him other stimulation.
Yeah, because Holly still doesn't like to play with him. So he said he was bored.
It's like a little scratch post or something that maybe even a toy or something he's interested in that he likes, but just move it into a different location. Then it's like, oh, that's in a different place. Anything that can give him some other mental stimulation, because the thing that kept coming up was, yeah, but that's boring. I already know. That's fun. It's not exciting. So we need to give him something else to do, because he's looking for something to do, and what he's looking for to do can be dangerous. So we want to set him up with something that will be fun and safe and interesting, that's stimulating his little brain a little bit. So another thing to do is, even with food, I don't know if he's food motivated at all, but make his meals a little bit of a puzzle. You can use muffin tins or something and tennis balls, and put the kibble or whatever. It wouldn't work very good for wet food, but if he eats kibble, you can put some of the kibble under the tennis balls, and maybe he has to work a little bit at it. Do something that he has to, or in boxes, you can nest boxes. They love boxes usually. So
yes.
Cardboard boxes, and you put some of the kibble in the boxes and maybe another box on top of it. And so he's kind of has to go in and go hunt around and root around to find his kibble. It's mentally stimulating, and that can really get the brain going and help it's more productive than letting him come up with his own things to do.
Right.
He's
Like
looking,
bother Holly and
right,
run around and jump on her.
right, right. So if he has, or if you have a cat tree or something like that, and if you have one, then he might be bored with it. So you can sometimes just move it into a different location, or take it away for a while and then come bring it back out, in a day or two, and it's like, oh,
Mhm.
so it just rotating the stimulation about. So that's what I would do for him,
Okay.
and I think it hopefully will help with his curiosity about getting into something, into a pickle.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll have time for one more. So Joan, see your hand is up.
Hi.
Hi, Joan.
My main thing that I was wanting to talk about was removing blocks to flow, like abundance and energy and all that. And I
Okay.
just come into my head that my two cats, Mickey and Serafina, might have some wisdom to add to that as well.
Okay. Yeah, abundance is a big one. That might be a fun topic that we can focus in on. I've done ones on fear and money, which I haven't taught in quite a while. So maybe I don't know if that's a topic of interest, but we can focus specifically on that. But let's go ahead and remove some emotions that are related to abundance blocks. Taken for granted is one. I'm clearing that. Worry. Clearing that. Oh. Ooh. It's also that's your block is in your heart chakra. I can feel that was where the release just was, but I can feel like a wall around there. Unworthy, clearing that. So yeah, this sense of unworthy, which is that unconscious. Our brain says yes, I am worthy, but there's an unconscious dynamic saying no, we're not worthy of having that. So we want to get rid of not only the emotion, but help shift the habit of whatever that created. Oh, there was a nice little pop and release in that area, but there's a few layers there that we might want to hack away at. Pride is another emotion, so let me clear that. Pride can be a positive and a negative, and in this case, of course, we're talking about the shadow aspect of pride, where our ego is involved. And again, there's a healthy ego and an unhealthy ego. In this case, it's the insecure part of pride, where our pride is hurt, or that's what we're releasing, so that we can get to a healthy pride of our work, of our authentic self. Oh, and so some of it too is because where the fear part is around money isn't about, it's not associated with your most authentic self. There's a mismatch of feeling your self-worth and your most authentic self, of having value, versus maybe however you're earning money. There's a mismatch. That's what I'm picking up. So we want to get those more aligned, and those, as we raise your frequency up to what aligned to what you really want, then that's what will attract, because it acts like a magnet. And so if there's a mismatch, and again, if you're stuck in the worry state, or in the unhealthy pride state, that's what we're attracting, which is then slow income coming in.
Mhm.
So we want to get that, we want to get you synced up and aligned to where you really want to head to. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Sometimes
Thank
we
you.
don't always know what that is, which is part of the problem as well. We may not always know what direction we want to head into. We're in that, we're neither here nor there. We may not like what we're doing, but we're not sure where we want to head towards. So if we're not sure, then spirit has a hard time going, well, I don't know what you want. So it may throw you something, but it's like, no, that's not it. And if it's not if it's not at least I know for me, and I've tried for uh, um adding other income streams into my business sometimes, and if it's not a good fit, it does not work for me, because it's not coming, I'm not resonating from my heart. It's coming from here, or again, that solar plexus. It's really coming from my solar plexus, which is all about worrying about money, and and it's not coming from here. So man, it just doesn't work. But when I work from my authentic self and connecting with what I'm passionate about, that's when things start flowing a whole lot better.
Mhm.
So let me know how that works for you. If sometimes all of a sudden you open your mailbox, you go, where'd that come from? How cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'd be curious to see if that helped open at least a little bit of the wallet coming towards you.
Thank you.
I wish it worked for getting lottery tickets, but it doesn't. I tried. It doesn't work. So Janet made a comment, that would be a good topic, fear and money. Okay, so great, thank you. I have some webinars coming up. We can add that into the list. So we're at actually over the top of the hour. So I just want to thank everybody for coming on tonight, and I hope this topic was of interest for you. We'll have some more coming for you. If you're interested in working with me at all or wanting to continue the work, you can check out my services at beananimallistener.com, and look forward to talking to you again real soon. Thanks again for coming on tonight.
Thank you.